And let me add myself here to the stream. Hi there. My name is Scott Paulsen. I am the founder of Paulsen Coaching and the Sales Sherpa Program for guiding your sales to new heights. And I want to thank you for joining me today on this webinar, the 4 A's of successful sales prospecting. Now, I've been in sales my entire career, almost 30 years now. But if any of you have heard the story, you know that I almost didn't last my first 30 days. You know, I basically in college, I was a Division I scholarship athlete, and all I wanted to do was be a coach. And when that particular dream failed to manifest, I had to put my degree in finance to work, and I went out and got a job. Took the first job offer that I was given, and became a stockbroker here in Houston, Texas. And I was working 10 and 12-hour days. While I was studying for my Series 7 exam, and after about 30 days, not even 30 days into it, I was ready to quit. Prospecting for me at that point was the most frustrating thing that I had ever experienced in my life up to that point. And I really didn't know what I was doing. I thought everybody should just automatically buy from me, but that's not the case. Then I found a book, and it really changed the trajectory of my career. It's Prospecting Your Way to Sales Success by Bill Good, and I still have it around here somewhere. And but that was way back in the mid '90s, and that's 1990s for all the youngsters who are joining and watching the webinar today. And since that time, a lot has changed, especially in the world of selling, but not any more so than in the part called prospecting. And that's what we're going to talk to you today about. That's what we're going to discuss today. Is the 4 A's of successful prospecting. But before we go there, I want to let you all know about this month's Sales Sherpa Masterclass that we're hosting May 23rd, 24th, 25th, and 26th from 9 a.m. to noon every day. It is live, but the recordings will be made available to all registered participants. This is almost guaranteed to double your sales, give you a selling methodology that will make your selling career much, much easier and much, much more profitable. Normally, this goes for about $1,500 per person. But during early bird registration, you can get it for $150. Now, we'll talk more about that later. So today, let's just go ahead and dive right into today's agenda. First thing that we're going to discuss today, we're going to cover the 5 most common prospecting myths that keep buyers from reaching sellers, and we'll debunk them. We're going to render them impotent. We're going to defang them. We're going to kill them, so that no seller can ever rely on them anymore, because they are just basically straight up myths and lies. Then we're going to get into the 4 A's of successful sales prospecting, which are, as you can see on your screen, number 1 is attitude, attraction marketing, adding value, action, and then lastly, but certainly not least of all, we're going to go through how to implement a 4A prospecting system into your selling process. Okay, so without any further ado or delay, let's just jump right into these myths. The very first myth, excuse, or reason that a buyer will give, or I'm sorry, that a seller will give to not prospect is that, oh, buyers don't really want to hear from sellers anymore. And those salespeople who spout this one out, they've probably seen research from organizations like the Corporate Executive Board, which states that 57% of purchase decisions are completed before the customer ever calls a supplier or a vendor. Or maybe they heard something from who are they called? A Serious Decision, a statistic that 67%, over 2/3 of the buying journey, is now done digitally. So with facts like that, with statistics like that, it's very easy for a salesperson to assume that buyers just don't want to or don't need to talk to them anymore during the buying process. That when they're ready to make a decision and take action on it, they'll just call up and say, here's what I need. However, the truth couldn't be further from the fact couldn't be for that could be further from the truth. Buyers do want to hear from sellers, but they want to hear it early in the selling or in the buying process. So let's just take a very simple look at a buyer's journey. We've probably seen this if you had marketing 101, or if you've got a marketing department, or if you got any contact whatsoever with a marketing professional, they'll talk to you about the buyer's journey and how we get the buyers through the journey to be qualified leads. Okay. And yes, I am kind of mocking them. But in our buyer's journey, we have the awareness stage where a buyer becomes aware of a problem or an opportunity, and they start kind of evaluating some options or alternatives, solutions for it. Then they move into that consideration where they are considering the different solutions, and when they decide on a solution, then they might decide in that last phase on what solution and what vendor to provide it. So as we go through this, we'll see, 71 research shows us that 71% of buyers want to hear from sellers when they're early in this awareness stage of their problem. At some times, they may not even be aware that they have a problem. Maybe you specialize in a specific industry and you have uncovered problems for customers in a certain industry, and you can take that solution to other customers in that same industry. That customer B may not be aware that that problem even exists, but if it is a industry problem, something that's more systemic, right, there is an opportunity to make that buyer or that possible customer aware of the problem. This is the highest stage when buyers want to hear from you. um, and they are actively now starting to look for the ideas and the possibilities that will drive business results towards that solution than they need. Now, if you get a little bit further on down the stage here in the awareness stage, you will see that that drops to 62% as buyers are transitioning from awareness and into the consideration stage. The buyer at this point has already defined their problem, and now they kind of got an idea of what the solution is that they need, though they're not yet 100% on the solution, and they can still be influenced as to what a right solution would look like. Now, after this, we'll see that it drops to about 49% when buyers are moving into that consideration stage. They're now vetting the solutions, and their willingness to hear from sellers drops all the way down to 49%. That's a big drop. They've analyzed the problem, they have a firm conviction on what their solution should be and what they need. And so they are much less willing to hear alternate ideas. Now, after this stage, something interesting happens as they begin evaluating solutions or possible providers. Their their willingness to hear from vendors goes up a little bit. They're vetting vendors, providers against their buying requirements, and they do want to hear a little bit more from the different alternatives out there. And this really represents the last chance that for any new entrants, for any new vendors or any new players to get in the game and to get on that buyer's radar screen. Because after this, as they are making their final decision, it drops all the way down to 30% because they're now receiving quotes. That buyer is now receiving quotes or bids. They're scheduling presentations, and they have already mentally reduced the list of potential vendors down to their finalists. It's very difficult to get into the mix at this stage of the game. And a lot of times when RFPs or RFQs are going out, it's right between these last two stages. And that's when you've got to really evaluate, is it worth our time to put out a bid for this? Because they've already gone through all the other stages. Now they're in the last two in that decision phase. Okay. So, point being, buyers want to hear from us. Buyers want to hear what we have to say, but they want to hear it early. If we're late to the game, don't expect to get don't expect to get an open door or a willing ear. All right, on to myth number 2. Prospecting myth number 2, cold calling is dead. This headline serves better as clickbait than as fact. And the reason is simple. Many sellers just don't want a cold call. So they just want this to be true. But the fact is that the phone is still essential for prospecting, especially if we're going to C-level and VP level buyers. Now, let's just take a quick look at preferred methods that buyers want to be contacted. If we look at research from the Rain Group, it shows that buyers' most preferred method of contact is email at about 80% here. However, right behind that is the phone call. They prefer the phone, about half of them, 49%. Now that ranks ahead of direct mail, okay? People still use the post office a little bit, right? Okay. And that also ranks ahead of, let's see here, seminars, conferences, and even LinkedIn, even social selling. It ranks ahead of all of that. And which, at the bottom of the list tied with social is text. So you want to text your buyer, they're more likely to respond to your email and a phone call. The takeaway here is very simple. If you're talking to high level buyers, C level, VP level, maybe even director level, use the phone, use email. That's the way that it works. Still works that way. Okay, on to prospecting myth number 3, which is, man, it's just impossible for us to get through. Okay, sellers always complain. Salespeople always complain. It's impossible to get through. I remember back in the 90s again, salespeople were complaining about voicemail. Voicemail was going to be the death of cold calling. I always go to voicemail. I can't get through to anybody. Oh, no. Okay. Well, you know what? Since that time, it's gotten even more difficult. It's certainly not easy, but sellers who work at it can absolutely get through. Here's the bottom line is that sellers have influence over many of the factors that get buyers to open their door. And we're going to go through 15 factors here very quick. Background here. 82% of buyers say that they will accept meetings with sellers who reach out to them. I'm talking about that cold call, that cold reach out. So, what are these 15 factors? Let's go through them here. Number 1 that they look at, it's a little tight there on the look. Number 1 is if they have a need now or if they foresee a need in the future. And guess what? This blue line means that sellers have influence over this factor. And it's absolutely true. Top and elite performing sellers are skilled at creating need awareness or confirming need awareness. That's the first stage in any selling buying process is getting that need awareness. Okay. So they absolutely have influence over that. Number 2 on the list is, do they have budget for it? And yes, again, sellers do have influence over this. And I'm going to distinguish influence versus control. I have influence if I'm a seller, if I'm good at creating need awareness and then elevating that need to a priority. If it becomes important enough, a buyer will find money. They will find budget. So a good salesperson, the top and elite performing salespeople, know how to create urgency so that a buyer will find budget. All right, number 3 on our list. Now, this is one that we have direct influence or direct control over, and it's providers. The salesperson offers to share value with them. Yes, sellers, you absolutely have control over this, how you craft your message. Instead of going into a sales pitch on that first time contact, start creating some value, offer some value. And that's right up there with number 4, which is number 4 is can I read that? It is have a relationship with the provider. Now we have no control over that, sadly. We just if we have a relationship with them or not previously, that it is what it is. which is the same here as number 5 on our list, which is have they bought from us in the past? We have no control over that. It is what it is. The history is the past, and we have no control over that, but we can change the future, right? Okay, so we go on to number 6. Has the buyer heard of the seller's company? This is the number 6 factor whether a that influences whether a buyer will let a seller have a meeting with them. And yes, we do have influence over this. If we are sending them emails, if we're leaving voicemails, if we have, we'll see here in just a little while what we call attraction marketing going on. Absolutely, we can influence that. Number 7 on our list, provider was referred from inside the company, meaning, uh, you know, Bob in accounting referred the guy to Susie in marketing. Yes, we have influence over that. Sellers do. If you integrate a referral program as part of your selling process, you have great influence over this and you can get referrals. It is not very difficult. It just has to be a matter of practice. All right, number 8 is checked out seller's profile. And guess what? We have complete control, or absolutely, we have complete control over this. Assume that your potential buyer is going to check out your profile on LinkedIn. It's the first thing that most people do. When I'm recruiting salespeople, if I don't see them on LinkedIn, it's like they don't exist. They might have a Facebook page. That's fine. I don't want to see their college days and cake stands, or their kittens and their puppies. Those things are all nice and cute, and that's great for personal. But if they're not existing on LinkedIn, then who are they, right? I see somebody only has 40 contacts or 150 contacts on LinkedIn, but they've been around. I've been in the business for 30 years. What have you been doing with your profile? That's a major piece over which we have direct control over. All right, number 9 on our list is, have they received information from the provider? If they've received information from you, then they are something like 64% more likely to give you a meeting. We have direct control over this, obviously. Number 10, has the provider posted valuable content online? And yes, we have direct control over this as well. Number 11 is, has that provider engaged me one-on-one, peer-to-peer? And yes, again, we have direct control over this. Now, number 12, they don't like being they don't like feeling like they're being sold to. And yes, the the salesperson has complete control over this. Like I said just a moment ago, if you go in blurting a sales pitch right away, boom, they're more likely to close you out, hang up on you, shut the door, delete your email, and just say, "Man, that was horrible. That was a waste of time." And we can change the way in which we interact with our buyers in those first contacts. In fact, we have to be very strategic about it. All right, number 13 is knowing people in common. Who do we know or have in common? And yes, we have some influence over this. We can check out profiles and we can get ideas of who they know and who we know, and kind of, get that introduction, right? Okay, 14. Was the provider referred from outside the company? And yes, again, we have influence over this. Who can we ask for? Excuse me. Who can we ask for a referral? We can get a referral from somebody. Get a referral campaign going. And number 15, last but certainly not least, they're dissatisfied with their current provider. And yes, we do have some influence over this. Believe it or not, we can, in the needs stage of the relationship, we can compare and contrast what it's like between their current provider and us, and can actually sow the seeds of discord and discomfort. All right, that's number 3. On to myth number 4. Excuse me. Buyers don't want to hear about your capabilities. They don't want to hear about what we can do. Well, you know what? I can't blame them for believing this, because many sellers have been told not to pitch capabilities. It's been very common here in the last number of years. Stay away from capabilities. Talk about value. Talk about the value that we bring. And while, yes, that's important, what we'll see is that research shows that buyers do, in fact, want to hear from us. Research shows that buyers, according to the buyers, insight and capabilities capture their attention. And while salespeople are told not to pitch capabilities, buyers want a combination of that. They want a combination of both. So here are the factors that uh, buyers want to hear. Okay, number one, primary research data. That's that insight. And you'll see number two, capabilities is a close second, a very close second. It's not enough to give that value add, but if you can't meet their needs, then what's the use of going any further, right? It just goes without saying. Number three is they want all of that customized. They want 100% customized content. They want it relevant to them. Number four is insights on offerings that solve their problems. What's your solution? What's the insight on the solution, and how's it going to solve their problem? Okay. Number five is what are current best practice methodologies? What's the rest of the industry doing? What's the rest of the world doing? How are they fixing the problems? And then next to that, they want insight on trends and issues that are emerging out there. Everybody loves hearing about the economy and supply chain now. What are we hearing about? Okay. After that, seventh is the financial justification. What's the return on investment? What's the total cost of ownership? Financial. Look, I'm a finance guy. I love talking about the finance because I can't dispute the numbers. Numbers are completely logic and rational. But you know what? Buyers are emotional at heart, and finances are seventh on the list. So what I usually fall back to is finance, and I always have to now catch myself and get into other areas to close the deal. Number eight is case studies. People who focus on just delivering case studies, yeah, they're good, they're important. People like them, but it's not the number one factor that they want to hear about. Number nine is how to's, tips and tricks, types of advice, anything that you can get on YouTube real easily. 10th here are client testimonials. So again, kind of moving down the list. Last one, invitation to events. You want to take them out to. We're about to start OTC here in Houston, Offshore Technology Conference, biggest energy conference in the world, and it's always a big deal for people to give an invitation to the events out there, or around rodeo time here in Houston as well. Well, you know what? That's not the number one thing. That's not the huge thing that buyers want. They want research, they want the value add, and they want capabilities. All right. Our fifth myth to bust: cold meetings don't convert to sales. Look, it's one thing to get the meeting, it's quite another to generate sales wins from them, especially when buyers are saying in the surveys that 58% of meetings are not valuable. That's sales meetings. 58% of your sales meetings are not valuable to the buyers. So, of course, if you're not creating value for the buyer in the meeting, you're not going to get the sales win. The truth is very simple. You know, if you want to get the meeting and eventually get that sale, focus on the value that you can deliver, work with them collaboratively, educate your buyer on ideas, provide them that valuable industry insight, and deepen their understanding. When you can do all of that, when you can bring forward these ideas that will make a difference to their business, then you are much more likely to get a sales win out of that meeting, because that buyer now feels that you have done something valuable for them. You've actually helped them solve a business problem. All right, now, how do we utilize these insights from busting the 5 myths? How do we utilize these to make prospecting work for us and turn us into top performing salespeople? Well, I'm glad you asked. That's where the 4A system comes into place. The first of our 4A's is attitude. attitude and focus of salespeople regarding prospecting are the top keys for being successful at it. And it boils down to this number one challenge. When salespeople have been surveyed about the number one challenge that they have in prospecting, they say, "I can't give enough time to it." It's having the motivation to dedicate enough time to prospecting. Motivation is a challenge for most people in most organizations, and you know, r- sometimes rightfully so. But prospecting is quite often the greatest motivational challenge of all. Having to face the rejection, develops call reluctance. It's critical in that kind of situation, in that environment, then to increase motivation for a successful execution of prospecting. And how we do that it's actually very simple. But like my old Swedish granny used to say, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. First things first, we've got to be aware of this. 82% of buyers are willing to meet with sellers who reach out to them. And when we realize that, man, 82% of buyers out there are willing to meet with me or to hear me out over the phone, give me a shot if I can get through to them, then my motivation should naturally be increasing. But the key, as we saw in those 5 myths of prospecting, is to try to find buyers while they're in the early stages of their journeys and to have a value added message for them. Buyers want to hear from you. Your customers want to hear from you. And when you consider this and you approach your outreach to them through the lens of adding value and how your capabilities can do that, your buyers and your customers, they'll help. You'll get uh, much greater success out of all of it. And conversely, you'll be much more motivated to proactively reach out on a consistent basis, which leads us to the second of our 4 A's in the successful sales prospecting system, and that is attraction marketing. Now, prospecting's always been a challenge. But it used to be a lot simpler. When I started off as that stockbroker in Houston, I had this big old directory. It was called the Harris County Business Guide. It looked like a white pages, the business white pages. But we paid a lot of money for it. It was like $500 or $600 back in the day. This is 1995 money, right? And so we pay $500 to get this directory, and it have the name of the company, the number of employees, their address, their phone number, and the names of the top officers, the owners, and would sit down, and you know what? We would just go through that directory and call. It was the paper-based system. We'd just call for target, see if anybody was interested. Would ask a few minutes on the phone and see if they were interested in new ideas, if we could make them money, if they were investors, that kind of thing. you know Sometimes we'd ask for a meeting one-on-one, or if we could send them some information, but we didn't have email, so we had to mail them information. Now, if we were fancy or trying to be proactive, then we might have sent them a letter through the mail, through the post service, to get to them first and say, hey, I'm going to be calling you in a few days. My name is Scott. Be looking for my call. Okay. Now, things have changed, of course. And then in the late 90s, early 2000s, the internet and email marketing made it possible for buyers to do much more research on their own. And everyone said cold calling was dead, but it wasn't. The top performing sellers, they just integrated the internet and email. They integrated those tools into their prospecting activities in order to supplement their cold calling. See, and then the next stage of evolution of content marketing, that was around 2010, around that time frame, when social networks and other web 2.0 platforms were emerging, and it made it even more challenging to grab buyers attention because everybody was going on social and YouTube. And this was 10, 12 years ago, and everybody said, once again, Well, cold calling's dead, but it wasn't. See, top performing sellers, they integrated that into their marketing and into their prospecting campaigns, and they use it to make their cold calling more effective. See, and now we're facing the advent of AI, artificial intelligence, and AI based marketing platforms are regurgitating the same old tropes and themes that I've been hearing for nearly 30 years, that finally this is the final nail and cold calling will be dead. It's the last nail in the coffin. Well, if history is any guide, then I truly doubt that it will, that it's going to kill cold calling. And that once again, top performing salespeople will somehow figure out how to best integrate it into their prospecting and marketing campaigns and make their cold calling even more effective. So, what are we to learn from this? Well, as we saw in the 5 myths, nearly half of all buyers still prefer to be contacted via the phone. 80% of them want an email, 50% phone. So, let's take a look at the most effective types of phone calls. Okay, if we look at the top 5 prospecting tactics, 3 of those involve phone calls. Number 1, phone call to existing customer. Yes, your existing customers want to hear from you. Just because you made one sale to them doesn't mean that you don't ever have to talk to them again. Call them again if you haven't in a while. They want to hear from you. Um, Number 2, phone call to past customers. They want to hear from you too. Number 3 on that list, presenting at conferences and seminars. Number 4, sending personalized one-to-one emails. Now, this is a survey of sellers, what's worked most effectively for them. And so we see that number 5, making phone calls to new contacts. Cold calling is number 5. In fact, if we look at studies of buyers, we will see that buyers will accept phone calls from new providers almost as much as they will favorably reply to an email from them. So if I have the choice between a cold call or a cold email, flip a coin. It Phone calls only below 77 to 69%. There's not much difference between them. However, here's the key point. Need to be fully aware that attraction marketing is not a one time call or a one time email. In fact, studies again show that top performers have to reach out to their prospects 5 times to get a conversion, or in this case, maybe a meeting or get them on the phone. 5 touches, whether that's a phone call, email, ping on LinkedIn, social, what have you. Okay. 5 touches for top performers. The average performers are not as good at it, and it takes them 8 touches to get that first contact. Don't confuse this stat with how many contacts it takes to close a sale. Something like 50% of all closes are done after the 5th contact. 80% of closes are done after the 5th contact. Do the math. If I've got to contact that person 5 times, it takes me 5 times to get through to them the first time. Hopefully it's not so bad in subsequent, efforts. It may take 40 touches, 30 to 40 touches to get the deal. Just accept it as a fact, learn how to do it. Now, because those top performers are that much efficient at it, we want to know what distinguishes them. What is it that makes them so much better than that? And that will bring us to the third the third of our 4 A's, which is adding value. Yes, as we saw when we debunked the 5 myths, you know, buyers do want to hear capabilities. They also want to hear value. Least of all, they don't want to hear a sales pitch when the seller is contacting them. That first contact, put yourself in their shoes. Put yourself in their shoes. If you get that cold email from some random person on the other side of the planet says, "We can fix all your problems, buy from me." We're discounting them. Here's what they do want. They do want that mix, as I was saying, they want that mix of research and insights that are relevant to their business. and they do want to hear about those capabilities, how you can make those happen. But again, keep in mind, thus far, we've only been talking about what's happening in the industry and out there in the marketplace, right? But they want to hear it tailored to them. What does it mean to them? They don't care about the solution until they know you care about them. They don't care about that solution until your insights and your capabilities have been made relevant to them. So tailor the content as much as you can to their specific and unique situation. This is how top performers set themselves apart from the pack. This is what keeps, or inability to do this is what keeps average salespeople average. Okay, top performers know the power of adding value. So they do it in every interaction that they can with the buyer. Everything has to be made relevant to them. Okay, so that's how we wrap it all into a nutshell and how we deliver it to our buyer. So all of this is great to know. It's fantastic to know. However, it is completely useless without the final of our 4 A's, which is action. Okay? Top performers have their prospecting systems down to a T. They know what they know who they're trying to reach, they know the message they're trying to deliver, and they know how they're going to do it. Whereas the average performers just kind of go willy-nilly at it. The average performers just take that old style approach. Give them a phone and a computer, let them make some calls, send out some emails. This is where they're just doing activity. And this is when I say sales is not a numbers game anymore. You get into this type of numbers game, you're being put onto a hamster wheel of activity with little chance of getting off of it. It's not about the quantity anymore. Hasn't been for a long time. In fact, it never really was. It's about the quality of that interaction. And that's what makes it better. That's what makes a top performer a top performer. They know their targets. They have better messaging based and focused on value. They have multi-touch prospecting campaigns outlined for them to follow, and therefore they get better results. Now, you can execute if you know what to do. But if you're not motivated, if you're not fired up, you're not going to execute with the energy that brings superior results. And you'll be much more prone to call reluctance and distractions. Conversely, if you're fired up, you're energetic, but you don't know what to do, you don't know the system, or you don't have the tools to execute it, to do it, that leads to frustration. And then work starts slowing down and results start really, getting worse and worse and worse. So the first three of our 4 A's, attitude, attraction marketing, and adding value, they support this last one, which is action. And when you believe in what you're selling, you sell it enthusiastically. You love to share it with people and you sell more of it. You close more deals. The sellers that drive value, they have significantly stronger motivation, and they more often are after that top performance. They get it. And it's true, has been for years, that when this attraction marketing campaign is clear, the multi-touch marketing, prospecting, and sellers know what to do to get through to buyers, they're going to be more motivated to do so, and they're going to execute more effectively. So it all works together. Which brings us to what's next? How do we put this in place? It's easy to get overwhelmed with ideas and start thinking up of a mental list of to-dos. I got to do this, 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 and this, after going through a webinar like this. However, I just want to let you know that the value of an unimplemented idea is precisely zero. So, how are you going to implement any of these 4 A's into your sales process? Glad you asked. I'd like to help you with that. I want to take your back, remind you of the offer here, the Sales Sherpa Masterclass, May the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th. and it's 90% off. So let me tell you a little bit how the Sales Sherpa methodology that is taught in this masterclass will help you bring that all into fruition. So the Sales Sherpa methodology, this is nothing new. This is not a new invention. I didn't come up with this. It was first developed way back in the 1960s by Xerox. They spent the equivalent of about $100 million researching the psychology of buying behavior. They called their program Selling by Need Satisfaction. And it resulted in the most prolific sales force in history. In less than 10 years, they captured a near monopoly in their market, and they were dominating it so much that they were pulled before the Federal Trade Commission and threatened that they were going to be broken up because they had too much of the market. They said, "Look, it's not the product. There's a lot of other companies that have our product. We're not keeping anybody out of our market. We just got a great sales team, got a great sales force." Now, since that time, every other sales training program under the sun has tried to take a piece of this, of what you're about to see, and they've turned it into a watered down version of it. And if you've been into other sales training programs, you'll kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about here. But here's how the real version looks. First of all, the client, of course, is at the middle of this, our buyer. The first stage in our methodology is identifying buyers' needs. And this goes way beyond than just, how can I help you today? Okay, that might be a great conversation starter, but that is not a needs analysis. This phase requires a mastery of identifying those buyers' needs and creating or confirming a need awareness through a strategic approach to questioning, or what some people call the sales interview. Now, your goal in this stage is to uncover not just the needs of the buyer, but what are the true motives and the drivers behind it? What's really the emotional aspects behind it that's going to cause them to take action? Because, as you know, or maybe you're not, maybe I'll make you aware of this just now, we all have multiple needs going on at any given moment. I have dozens of needs right now at this moment. However, I can only act on one of those needs, and that becomes a priority. So the second stage in this methodology is establishing the priority. What our buyers have to do, or what sellers have to do with their buyers, is elevate the energy behind that need. Because just because a buyer has a need, it doesn't mean they're ready to take action on it. Okay. Buyers only take action on prioritized needs, which requires the salesperson to have a mastery of this skill set in activating buyers' needs into priorities. How do you energize it? How do you make that need become so pressing that they have no other choice but then to take action on it? That's what we teach in this section. Then we can move on to the presenting solution stage. Only after, okay, this next tip by itself is going to save you so much time. If you're a salesperson, this will save you so much time and frustration. So write this down and try to remember it. Only after the buyer's needs have been activated into priorities should you ever make a presentation. It's not enough to get the need. Some people say, "Hey, find the pain point. Find the pain point." Yeah, okay, that's a little piece of what we're talking about when we're talking about needs and priorities. Okay, that's one way to kind of boil it down and to put it in a nice little tootsie roll and try to remember it. But only after you know what the emotional drives and motivations are behind the need, and it's at that point where look, how do I fix this? How do I really fix this problem now? That's the only time that presentation should be made. Okay. Anytime, or presenting a solution anytime before this, really is a total crapshoot. It's a gamble that does nothing but will kill your win rate. It's like the spaghetti test, throwing a bowl of spaghetti against the wall, hoping something sticks. It leads to weak presentations that are most likely to fail. If you do this right, we teach you how to come up with a lock and key presentation so that every feature that you talk about in your solution matches precisely one of the needs or the drives or the motives behind it, and it starts relieving the emotional stress of that problem that the buyer has. Then once that starts going on, we run into implementation. It's very natural. This is where closing happens. And there is a profound, seminal sea change in the way that closing happens in this methodology when compared to other selling methods, because it centers around buyer's stress and reducing that stress when the elevation of that need into the priority has been made and the emotional stress is high, and then the presentation is made on how we can fix it. Oh, that buyer just seems to breathe a sense of release. Oh, you can fix this. Great. What do I do next? Excellent. Let me tell you, here's how we implement the solution. Okay. From there, after this deal's done, it's into the managing relationships, because this is the most important phase of the selling buying process. It is the most important, more important than any other of these stages, but it is also the most neglected. It's most important because of the simple fact it costs you 5 times as much to get a new customer than it does to keep an existing customer. It's easier to put it in Grant Cardone methodology. It's easier to get the second sale than it is the first. Well, he's right. It is. It's much easier, but it requires having a relationship and having a feedback system and making it a practice to stay in touch with your buyer and not just a, hey, wanted to check in. Okay. That's gooberish. Now, all of that you can get May 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th. We work with you on crafting your needs analysis, on crafting the statements and the questions to uncover the needs, the motives, and the drivers. We work with you on how to prospect in a way that sets all of that up so that when you do get in, when you go from prospecting into selling, that the selling is a natural extension of it. This is where marketers and digital marketers fail so badly. They think just because somebody filled out a form or downloaded a white paper that they're a lead and salespeople should be able to close that. They miss that stage of emotional buildup. And so when the salesperson can pick up that naturally and bring it into their selling process, you're going to have leads that are more likely to close. Your win rates are going to skyrocket. And if I double your win rate with this program, your income's going to double. Your revenue's going to double. Okay. And it's very simply done. All you have to do is spend a little bit of time with us. I have a money back guarantee on the program. Look, if you click the link below, you'll get to the description of the course and you can enroll there. There's early bird pricing right now. It's 90% off, $150, money back guarantee. Guys, you got very little, nothing to lose. Hey, I want to thank you for being here today. That was my sales pitch. I'm confident you got value out of it. Shoot me an email, drop me a line, put some comments in. Let me know what you thought about it and how this helps you. And until next time,